Thank you, Daryl. Thank you, John. I must admit, as I sit here listening to you play, I feel like you've really humbled yourself to play along with me when I hear how well you play with John. That just sounds great. I'm also a little taken by the fact that you're my kid who's capable of playing as well as you do. And I'm thinking, how did that happen? I know you did it all on your own. Practice, that's right, a lot of practice. I saw a comic in a church magazine just a few weeks ago while I was up visiting my parents in Ontario. It's just a single frame comic. At the bottom it says Jesus as a teenager. And in the image, Jesus is sitting on the side of his bed kind of with a pout on his face. And his mother, Mary, is standing over top of him with her hand on her hip. And she's scolding him. She's saying, "Now, Jesus, clean up your room, take out the trash, and I don't want to hear any more of this, my chores are not of this world sort of thing." You know, Jesus said to be his disciple, we have to pick up our cross and follow him. When he said to be a disciple is to carry the cross, I'm sure he didn't mean carrying the cross. It means doing things you don't want to do, like cleaning up your room or taking out the trash. Those are just things that we take care of on a daily basis. Those are things that just need to be taken care of. No, when Jesus said, if you want to be my disciple, you got to carry a cross, what he meant was this. And I hope if you want, you might take a note here, or at least make a mental note, because nobody put it this way for me for a long, long time. I kind of had to figure it out on my own. Maybe you did too. When Jesus said, if you want to be my disciple, you have to carry a cross, what he meant was you have to believe in the redemptive power of God's love. In all circumstances, in all places, you have to believe in God's redeeming power, God's redeeming love in your life. What does the cross mean for us? It represents God's redeeming love for the world. God's powerful love which was able to transcend all other powers, the power of sin, the power of death. It was able to transform the world, change it forever. So to carry the cross means that we believe in God's redeeming love, the power of God's redemptive love in all that we say, in all that we do, in all that we choose. It means believing that with God, no matter what the circumstance, that in all circumstances, in all relationships, whether they be friendships or marriages or relationships with your children or relationships with your parents or your siblings, believing that with God in all of these things, all things are possible. Carrying the cross means believing it and acting as if you believe it all the time. Believing that in all communities, in all congregations, in all cities, whether it be Cleveland, Ohio, or Detroit, Michigan, or whether it be Baghdad, Iraq, or Kabul, Afghanistan. All things are possible because of God's redemptive and powerful love, which we see in the cross. To carry the cross means believing in God's redemptive love. I don't know if I've said it enough or if you've got it, but I hope you understand it doesn't mean doing your chores. It doesn't mean taking out the trash. It means believing and acting as if you believe in everything you say, you do, and you choose, as if God has this mysterious, powerful love which can change all things, which can rewrite your own personal story, which can lift you up when you've fallen down, which can bring hope when you experience despair, which can bring light to darkness, believing in God's redemptive power in all places and all times. That's what it is to carry the cross. Carrying the cross means believing you don't do it because you want to do it. It means believing you carry it because you have to carry it. that you're compelled, not have to as in you must carry the cross. Have to because you've bought into it completely. You've caught fire because of that redemptive power of God's love. You've seen it at work in the world because you know there is no other way than that redemptive power of God's love. Carrying it means that you do it not because you want to, but because you have to, because it is the essence of life itself. Jesus said, you have to, if you're following me, if you're carrying the cross, you have to do it above everything else, above your family, above your friends, above life itself, he said, because he understood that it is life itself. The redemptive power of God's love is what brings us the abundant and eternal life. It looks like it sort of stops up there at Golgotha, but if you are like me and you know the story that on the third day God rolled away the stone and raised up Jesus, you know the redemptive power of God's love even transcends death, overcomes that power, that principality. Maybe you've seen injustice so clearly you know there's no other way but justice. Maybe you've seen hopelessness and despair so clearly you know there is no other way but the hope of God's redemptive love in Jesus Christ. No other way but the cross. Why does an alcoholic go to Alcoholics Anonymous? Not because he wants to, because he has to. Why do couples in marriage stay faithful year after year after year? Not because they have a perfect marriage, not because they never argue or never have a disagreement, but because they know without that faithfulness, without that fidelity, the marriage would fail. It's life itself, it's existence itself. Why do Christians practice their faith? Why do we carry the cross? Because we know it's the only way. Oh, we may get tempted by this world. We may get seduced by a secular world that wants us to believe that you can find peace another way. You can find happiness another way. But when the MasterCard bill comes in at the end of the month, you know that maybe the MasterCard wasn't the road to happiness. No, we are faithful. We carry the cross because we believe that carrying the cross means we do it not because we want to do it, but because we have to do it. We're compelled. It's our vocation to carry the cross. We're on fire about it. Vocation comes from the Latin word vocare, which means to call. It's our calling to carry that cross. It's our life to carry that cross. It's not that we're forced to do it or we want to do it. There may be days, my goodness, we don't want to carry it. You know, when my alarm went off at 6:10 this morning, I thought maybe I'll start carrying the cross in another hour. I think I'd like another hour's sleep today. But I know that the cross is my life. I know that carrying the cross is what brings meaning and purpose to my existence. I know that there is no other way than carrying the cross. Why do we carry the cross as people of faith? Because we're compelled to do so. It's in us. We're driven to do it. Carrying the cross means we also believe that we didn't choose the cross, but it chose us. It's a hard one for us to get our heads around sometimes. Sometimes people think carrying the cross is a choice. But you know, if you've caught fire, if you've seen its power in the world and in your life, you get a sense that it's choosing you. If you're standing in a place where you recognize something is so wrong that you must stand up for what is right, you start to get a sense that maybe that situation, maybe that thing that was so wrong chose the cross for you. Maybe it's what forced you or pushed you to stand up for what was right, to pick up that cross in that context. Do you remember that old story where the guy, he's saying his prayers before he goes to bed at night, and he's so weary and feels so burdened by carrying the cross that he's been carrying, that in his nightly prayers he says, "Lord, take this cross from me, it's too much of a burden." Well, that night while he's sleeping, he dreams that Jesus comes to him in his dream. And Jesus said, "What is the matter?" And he said, "Lord, you've given me this cross that's so heavy to carry. I don't think I can carry it anymore. Please take it from me or give me a lighter cross." So Jesus takes him to this huge storehouse, a big box store of crosses, if you will. It's a storehouse filled with crosses of all various weights and sizes. And Jesus said, if your cross is too heavy, my friend, then take your cross in there, set it down, and go find another one. Pick another cross. Choose one for yourself. So Jesus walks beside the man as they walk through this storehouse. Jesus even makes little suggestions to him about possibly this cross. Maybe you'd like to carry this one. And the man says, no, I couldn't carry that one. That's way too big. And so they walk a little further, and Jesus says, how about this cross? Would you like to choose this one? And the man said, no, I couldn't take that one. That one looks far too heavy for me. Finally, they've circumnavigated the entire storehouse of crosses, and he can't find one that fits, that suits him and his needs. Until finally, at the end, he sees a little cross over in the corner leaning against the wall, and he says, Jesus, how about that cross? I think I'd like to choose that cross. And Jesus says, that's the cross you want? And he said, yes, I think I could carry that one. Jesus says, that's the cross you brought here with you. You know, there's a sense that the cross finds us, that chooses us. It's not that we get to choose one that fits us. It's one that we've been given and one we feel compelled to carry. You know, I was thinking about Martin Luther King Jr. and the cross he carried. You know, if you were to ask Martin Luther King Jr. if he knew how his life would play out, do you think you'd like to lead this movement towards civil rights? Do you think you'd like to have your family terrorized and threatened and have death threats made upon you and then be assassinated in the end? Do you think he'd want to pick that cross up and carry it? I don't think he'd want to, but he'd feel compelled to. But when you think about Martin Luther King Jr.'s life, that cross came and found him. He was living in the midst of injustice. He was living in a world where there were rights for some, but not for others. And so he felt compelled to pick that cross up. It chose him. I was thinking about Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the German theologian who made an assassination attempt on the life of Adolf Hitler during the Second World War. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was executed for that attempt just 2 or 3 days before the end of the Second World War was declared. He was living in a world where people were being boxed off in cars, on trains, shipped off to concentration camps, put to death, where the majority of Christians in his world were becoming silent. He felt he had no other choice than to pick up the cross of Jesus Christ in that context. That cross came and chose him. That cross came and found him. He picked it up because he felt he had no other choice. It chose him.